So, we are back with Box Office Maniacs, and we were reviewing one of my most anticipated movies of this year.
Vince.
What?
It's the Big Five!
It is the Big Five.
You didn't mention it was the Big Five, though.
I just mentioned it. I said it is the Big Five.
So, what are we reviewing then, Vince? For the Big Five. For the month of whatever month this is.
We are reviewing The Conjuring 2.
So, we're going to conjure up this review for you. You like what I did there? Did you see that, Vince?
I saw it.
You see that?
Conjuring 2. We've been waiting to see this thing, and waiting to see this thing, and waiting to see this thing, because after the first one was so freaking fantastic to the both of us, and we were so blown away, we couldn't wait to see this, right?
The one thing I want to talk about before we really get into this review is James Wan. Okay, so I didn't really become a fan of James Wan until The Conjuring, I guess. I mean, I was kind of a fan of his with Insidious. Really, before Insidious, I had no idea who he was, and I didn't even go see Insidious in the show, so we saw that on Blu-ray when it came out, and I still really wasn't sure who he was. So I think The Conjuring is what really put James Wan in the spotlight, because it was a huge success.
Well, yeah, I wasn't really sure who James Wan was. I had heard of his name, but not really everything that he had done. And I really didn't even realize he did Saw, the first Saw film.
I'm pretty sure I've seen every single movie that James Wan has directed, and most of them at the theaters, and I didn't even realize I was going to see his film until the first Conjuring came out, and that's when I became a fan of his. And he's like one of the few directors now that I would go see a movie just because he directed it. That's how much I love his directing.
Yeah, there's very few movies that I'll go and do that, and he's definitely one of them.
One thing about the first Conjuring film, I mean, after I watched it, I kind of went back and to see how realistic it was compared to what really happened, because, you know, it's supposed to be based on a true story. What you saw in the film is not exactly or anything like what really happened in real life. Basically, the first film, he tried to scare the living crap out of you and not really worried about realism, I guess you can say.
Okay, well, that's what they do with movies anyway.
What I'm getting to here is it seems like The Conjuring 2, he tried to put more realism in this than he did in the first one. The first one was just all balls to the wall scares. You know, we're going to scare the living crap out of you. And this one is more or less more of a realistic look at it. It's still scary, but it's more of a realism scare here, I think.
I think what you're trying to say is he stuck to the Warrens' actual story more than he did with the first one.
And anyone who had seen the first one knows how it ends. And this one really begins right where that one ends. And, you know, both you and I were like, because I don't want to give any spoilers out for those who haven't seen the first one, but both you and I were like, you know, we wished that was what this entire film was about, was the ending of the first one. But then when they show it, it starts right at the end of the first one. It comes right into it. So, and I was like, oh man, here we go.
Right, exactly. And I first 10 minutes of this film, I was blown away. I mean, I just sat there in awe of it. I was like, they're actually going there.
Yeah, I literally got goosebumps just talking about that, Vince. That's how amazed I was at the beginning of this film.
Yeah, that was something I was really, truly waiting for. And even though I know even in the real story, there really wasn't a whole lot to it. So I was amazed with what they did with that.
See, that's what I was about to say, too. There was no way they can make an entire movie about that, because they weren't in that case that long. They only did it a little while, and there wasn't much to it. That's why they couldn't make an entire film out of it.
Right. But it was because of what they did that people believe what they believe about that case.
So about a year and a half ago, my wife came to me and told me there was this BBC special that came on about this ghost case. And, I love Ghost or anything to do with Ghost. And she's like, oh, we really need to watch this. It sounds great. It's one of the most documented ghost cases in history.
The Infield Haunting, or as it was called, its actual tag on The Conjuring 2 is the Infield Poltergeist.
So about a week after we heard about that TV show, the Conjuring 2 trailer came on, and that's what The Conjuring 2 was about that case. And I was like, okay, well now I'm going to have to wait a year and a half to watch this TV show, but it will be worth it because I don't want to have any spoilers going into The Conjuring 2, so I didn't watch anything about it. And to tell you the truth, Vince, and this is very rare this ever happens, is before I went to go see The Conjuring 2, I never saw one trailer for it. Not one. I'd never seen anything about this movie at all. Nothing.
I saw the first trailer. I saw the second trailer. After that, I was like, no, I'm not going to watch another one until I see the movie. Not another ad, not another TV show, not another nothing. I wasn't going to watch anything until I saw the movie. So going into this, I'm so glad that I did it because it made everything that happened on screen even more frightening.
So let's get into the movie then here, Vince. Yeah, it's like I said, it's more realistic than the first one. Even though there's a lot of things in this that are not realistic that I believe they just probably threw in there just to, for scares and whatnot. But most of it, Ed and Lorraine Warren were trying to debunk, like saying, okay, well, this happened because of this. And you don't really see that in horror movies. I mean, it's usually just, okay, here's the monster, we're going to scare the crap out of you, like the first one. But this one, they really treated it completely different.
You don't see that. You don't see that with a horror film where you have people coming in there and trying to show you what actually is really happening or going on, and then they find themselves in the horror.
I can say that my wife screamed out loud at least twice in this film. I mean, literally screamed out loud when she was watching the movie, which I don't think she's done since we watched Insidious, the first Insidious. She literally screamed out loud when she saw the first Insidious, and she did it twice in this film, which is pretty impressive.
My wife, too. I think she almost broke my arm.
There is a character in here called the Crooked Man, which I'm pretty sure James Wan made up, unless it's some sort of urban legend. And I'm 99% sure that was never in this case, ever. He
kind of entwined the nursery rhyme of the Crooked Man into this movie.
My wife told me that they're planning a spin-off of this film with one of the characters in it, and I am assuming it's the Crooked Man, because when they actually show the Crooked Man in this film, they do it so well. He's obviously CG, he's a CG character, but the way they do it, it looks like he's stop motion, like an old stop motion puppet, and it's really creepy the way they do it.
Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, there's The Nun.
And it's really creepy, and it's all practical effects again. The Nun, I mean, she wasn't a CG monster like the Crooked Man. She was just a person wearing makeup, and he's really good with that. He's really great when it comes to practical effects, using mostly practical effects in the films.
Yeah, and combining the CGI that he does use, but he combines them so well. It's like watching Star Wars: The Force Awakens. I mean, everything blends together really well.
While I love this film, I don't think it was as good as the first film. I think it was a little slower paced for me in this film. It was still spectacular, but I don't think, for me anyway, it wasn't as good as the first film. I don't think it was anyway.
I totally disagree. I think it was every bit as good as the first film. I was totally surprised and it blew me away in some parts. I mean, like I said, there were some parts in here that were just a lot scarier than what they did in the first film. Even though they are showing a crooked man and it's a CGI crooked man, it's still scary. I mean, it was still creepy and tension filled, and since I didn't really know the whole entire story of the Infield Poltergeist, it was even more. And I didn't watch any other trailers. It was even more scary for me.
I think what it is with this film and the first film is the first film, I think, had, for me anyway, a better story. It had a better ghost, I guess you can say. The ghost in here was kind of like, okay, it seems like the ghost in here, it seemed like that James Wan kind of made up. Again, I don't want to give any spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen the first film, but I think that the ghost or the creature or whatever in the first film was scarier than it was in this film, is what I'm saying.
It was more of a haunting. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So, what are you giving this film, Vince?
I'm going to conjure up my review, and here it is. The ball!
I will give this film a 5 out of 5.
There's a part in this film, I'm not going to give away what happens. I'm just going to say it involves Patrick Wilson and Elvis. And that's all I'm going to say. But when you see this movie, I want you to realize, when you see Patrick Wilson do what he's doing, that is all him.
Now we're going to have everybody rushing out there to see the sex scene in The Conjuring. Good job, Vince.
There's no CGI to it. That was a practical effect. It involves him and Elvis. And that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about Patrick Wilson.